Today we're looking at a piece by German minimalist artist Joachim Bandau, known for sculptures and paintings, but beginning in 1983 he began a series of paintings using black watercolor. These are technique-driven watercolor artworks that feature transparent gray and rhomboid floating squares and rectangles. Today, for our techniques, we're going to need to gather one sheet of Arches brand 9x12 140-pound hot press watercolor paper, 60 milliliters of Brusho Crystals black paint reconstituted, and 10 to 20 milliliters of Brusho Crystals Scarlet watercolor also reconstituted. Any liquid watercolor will do, but liquid watercolor is your suggestion. 2 1-inch Blick paint brushes, one for paint, one for clean water to do the wet and wet technique. You will need a roll of frog tape delicate surface. You will need paper towels or Q-tips. I prefer Q-tips. You need 30 milliliter droppers, 3 custard cups to allow for your desaturation process. You will also need a bone knife to make sure the tape edges are as flat as they can be to keep the paint from pushing under the tape while you're using the next step, which is the blow dryer. To begin with, we will need to mix the Brusho Crystals watercolors together, both the black and the scarlet. Once we have that mix, that we call the original mix, we will then make our other mixes in a stepped variant, beginning with using 90 millimeters of water to 30 millimeters of the original mix. This will get us to about a foggy black, like this. We will then take and dump 30 millimeters of the foggy mix with 30 millimeters of clean water. We will then go back to our original mix and mix 30 millimeters of original mix with 30 millimeters of clean water. Each mix should be kept in its own custard cup and marked. This will allow for you to keep from driving yourself nuts while doing this time-intensive technique. We will take our Arches paper and lay it in a portrait orientation, and beginning at the top of the paper, we will recreate a rectangle, square, or rhomboidus, much like you will see in Joachim Bandau's pieces. Size is optional and up to the artist. After you have laid the tape down, begin by using the bone knife to get the tape down as flat as you can. Next, you will take your water brush and wet the surface of the paper that has been taped. You will then take your paintbrush into cup number 1 and lay the pigment down. While yes, it is a very light pigmentation, this is what you want to recreate the transparencies that Bandau is known for. Next, you will take a paper towel and just along the edges without touching the middle, you will wipe out all the excess that has made it onto the tape. This will make it easier to control the water when you start using the blow dryer. Next, you will grab the blow dryer and a Q-tip and begin blow drying the paper until it is fully dry. Using the Q-tip to remove any excess that may be floating onto the paper. Just like this. As the paper dries, you can turn up the blow dryer for faster speed. Next, we will remove the tape, and you should have a shape similar to this. You will repeat the taping, painting, and drying process 3 more times using the lightest mix in cup number 1. You will do this by using a staggered overlapping layers like this. Making sure that the inside of the square has the flat edges. You will then again flatten it with a bone knife, making sure the whole area is covered in tape. We didn't quite get there on this one, so we'll just overlap the tape just a little bit. It shouldn't cause any misalignment. And you will make sure again that that bone knife takes it down. And you will repeat the process that 3 more times. After having done the 3 layers, we now have a surface that looks about like this, which you can see the transparencies are building upon each other. Next, I will tape off screen the next square. Now that we've taped the surface again, we'll repeat the process, but this time we will use mix number 2. As you can see, this mix is far more pigmented and begins to show you the beauty of the black underneath it. And then we'll repeat the same blow drying to get us dry. You remove the tape again, and again repeat the process using staggered overlapping layers. Again, you will do this process 6 more times using pigment number 2. As you can see, I have now added the 6 layers using mix number 2. We will now repeat this process again 5 more times using mix 3. I have now taped the surface to do the 5-step mix using number 3 mix. I will again do a wet on wet technique, making sure the paper is lightly wet, taking the paint and getting it on there. As you can see, this is a much more pigmented version of the paint. As you can see, we begin the final step, which is repeating the process 2 more times to create the darkness. And as you can see when I remove the tape, when doing so, you get a hyper-pigmented black that is showing all the transparencies throughout the painting, which you can see gives it a pigmented edge that comes off. And just like in Joachim's pieces, there's sometimes edges that aren't perfect, but that's okay, that's part of the process. We'll do this 1 more square and we'll be done with this. And the technique gives that X-ray layered feeling throughout the painting. Every piece will be unique, but you should try this on your own. As you can see here, I have done 1 of the 2 processes for the last layering, which is the undiluted original mix. As you can see, the edges aren't always perfect when we get this high in pigmentation, but that's okay because that's how Bandau had done it. This is also a slightly different technique at this stage. So at this stage, you're doing a dry to wet technique, going over it twice halfway through the drying process, making sure to create even edges as you're doing so, and then wiping your tape down to keep it from seeping over into edge areas you don't want it to go. Due to the pigmentation level, it is best to try to keep the tape from being soaked through. So as it's starting to dry, I will then take this last layer that will add that deep color we are seeking. Again, stopping what we're doing before we dry it with the dryer to wipe our edges. Now that it's dry, we can remove the final tape, and what we have is a piece that simulates what Bandau did. And while we do have some leaking of the tape, it was the best tape we could find for the job. As you can see by the painting, this is a close proximity to what Joachim Bandau did. While not perfect and the edges did leak, so did his, and we expected that. In the future, I'd like a little stronger of a tape, but I think that we were able to successfully recreate this technique. That is my lesson. Thank you.